Well, good morning. Welcome to Daily Videos with me, Pastor Michelle. Today's Thursday, January 14th. And let's get started with catching fire, shall we? The anthem begins, but there are no faces in the sky tonight. The audience will be restless, thirsting for blood. BD's trap holds enough promise, though, that the game makers haven't sent in other attacks. Perhaps they're simply curious to see if it will work. At what Finnick and I judge to be about 9, we leave our shell-strewn camp, cross to the 12 o'clock beach, and begin to quietly hike up to the lightning tree in the light of the moon. Side note, I just got done working out, so I'm a little out of breath. Our full stomachs make us more uncomfortable and breathless than we were on the morning's climb. I began to regret those last dozen oysters. BD asked Finnick to assist him, and the rest of us stand guard. Before he even attaches any wire to the tree, BD unrolls yards and yards of the stuff. He has Finnick secure it tightly around a broken branch and lay it on the ground. Then they stand on either side of the tree, passing the spool back and forth as they wrap the wire around and around the trunk. At first, it seems arbitrary. Then I see a pattern like an intricate maze appearing in the moonlight on BD's side. I wonder if it makes any difference how the wire is placed, or if this is merely to add to the speculation of the audience. I bet most of them know as much about electricity as I do. The work on the trunk's completed just as we hear the wave begin. I've never really worked out what point in the 10 o'clock hour it erupts. There must be some buildup, then the wave itself, then the aftermath of the flooding. But the sky tells me 10:30. So this is when BD reveals the rest of the plan. Since we move most swiftly through the trees, he wants Johanna and me to take the coil down through the jungle, unwinding the wire as we go. We are to lay it across the 12 o'clock beach and drop the metal spool with whatever is left deep into the water, making sure it sinks, and run for the jungle. If we go now, we should make it to safety. I want to go with them as a guard, PETA says. After the moment with the pearl, I know he's less willing than ever to let me out of his sight. You're too slow. Besides, I'll need you on this end. Katniss will guard, BD says. There's no time to debate this. I'm really sorry. If the girls are to get out of there alive, they need to move now. So he hands the coil to Johanna. I don't like the plan any more than PETA does. How can I protect him at a distance? But PETA's right. With his leg, PETA's too slow to make it down the slope in time. Johanna and I are the fastest and most sure-footed on the jungle floor. I can't think of any alternative. And if I trust anyone here besides PETA, it's BD. It's okay, I tell PETA. We will just drop the coil and come straight back up. Not into the lightning zone, BD reminds me. Head for the tree in the 1 to 2 o'clock sector. If you find you're running out of time, move over one more. Don't even think about going back on the beach, though, until I can assess the damage. So, sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I just got done doing some crunches and some weights. So I'm a little out of breath. Apparently I'm not, I get winded easily. So, my friends, let's hear a reading from 1 Corinthians. When I came to you, brothers and sisters, I did not come proclaiming the mystery of God to you in lofty words or wisdom, for I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus and him crucified. And then I came to you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. In God's love note. My message of love and vulnerability was a hard one for my son Paul to sell to a community shaped by the cloud of the Roman Empire, where what mattered was brute force, power, and a reign of fear. Paul took a lot of risks by bringing a message that transparently said my son was murdered by the government as if he were a political prisoner. And what seemed like a defeat for me was actually a victory. These days, your generation wears cross necklaces as a proud declaration of your devotion to Jesus. But in the early days, the cross was a mark of shame, and my son Paul showed up in a community saying, I am not strong, and I follow a God who was murdered by the state. My beloved child, do you know what? That message meant something to many people who could relate to feeling vulnerable themselves, to learning that their God did not see their vulnerability as a flaw, but as a thing that could help them extend the love and empathy that I dream of for you and your whole human family. Today, I invite you to reflect on how your vulnerability can bring comfort to others, knowing that I love your own vulnerability. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. So, I do hope everyone's doing okay. I'm trying to get in better shape. I walked Lemmy this morning already, and I've been working out. So that's just me doing what I can to better myself. And I want to do what I can to also just better myself mentally and spiritually. It's not just about being healthy physically. It's about being healthy in all the ways that we're human. So that's me. I'm just trying my best, So let's continue talking about Zipporah. And this was a painting by an artist of Moses and Zipporah. So she was a woman of color, they're believed. So Moses reached a well in the Midian where he met a group of young girls, including a woman named Zipporah, whom shepherds were harassing. Moses intervened, and in gratitude, he was invited to dine with Zipporah's father, a priest named Jethro. Moses remained with Jethro and married Zipporah. She presented him with a son named Gershom, a wordplay on the Hebrew Gersham, meaning an alien. God then charged Moses to lead the Israelites out of bondage and bring them to the promised land. Moses and Zipporah dutifully set out for Egypt, even though she had just given birth to their second child, a son named Eliezer, who had not yet been circumcised. When Moses fell ill, Zipporah quickly took a sharp flint and circumcised the infant, thinking that God was angry with Moses. In Egypt, however, Moses is pleased to release the Hebrew slaves fell on deaf ears. To punish the Pharaoh, God sent a series of plagues. Take your flocks and your herds, he told Moses, and be gone. Moses then led his people into Sinai. I love the story of Moses. And, it's important to point out that Moses, he didn't even live to see the promised land, I don't think. I think Joshua was his successor, and Joshua got to see it. And I think that just speaks to us, how we are called to create a better world. And, there's a chance that we're not going to be able to see that better world that we're striving to make. There's a chance that generations after us will be the ones to reap what we sow. But that's okay, because I think we're called, no matter what, to continue building a better world. So that's just some thoughts I had. So let's hear more from Humans of New York, shall we? So here's this man. He says, I've been a deep believer my whole life, 18 years as a Southern Baptist, more than 40 as a mainline Protestant. I'm an ordained pastor, but it's just stopped making sense to me. You see people doing terrible things in the name of religion. You think, those people believe just as strongly as I do. They're just as convinced as I am, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to believe in a God that dabbles in people's lives. If a plane crashes and one person survives, everyone thanks God. They say, God had a purpose for that person. God saved her for a reason. Do we not realize how cruel that is? Do we not realize how cruel it is to say that if God had a purpose, he also had a purpose in killing everyone else on that plane? And a purpose in starving millions of children? A purpose in slavery and genocide? For every time you say that there's a purpose behind one person's success, you invalidate billions of people. You say there's a purpose to their suffering, and that is just cruel. And here's another one, a picture of someone holding their journal, and it says, my mom found some satanic stuff in my journal, and it really freaked her out. I will can I just add my 2 cents to that man, the pastor, who says he just doesn't understand, that whole purpose. And I'm still struggling, and I still am working out my own faith. But for me, I don't think that God is the reason bad things happen. I don't think God's behind, if a plane crashes, I don't think that God is the one that made the plane crash because God had some purpose to kill everyone on board. I don't think when someone gets sick that God has a purpose for that person and made them get cancer, because that was something that a pastor told my grandma when she was lying on her deathbed with dying of cancer. He said, you did something to make yourself sick. And it's bullshit. Because for me, I don't feel like God works in the world in that way. I don't think God makes all the things that happen in the world happen. I think that we have more control than we realize, I think. And that can be a good or bad thing. And what I believe, though, and what I hold my faith on, is that Bad things happen in the world. That's inevitable. But the thing is, God is right there in the midst of the good and the bad. So that day when the Capitol was taken over, God was right there. God was with everyone that was fighting for their lives. God was there in the midst of the badness. God promises to walk with us. That's just what I hold my faith on. So I don't know if that, I'm still working it all out, because I think faith is a lifelong journey. And that's what I tell the confirmation kids every year. It's not something we're going to figure out in one day. It's something we're going to spend our lives figuring out. So, because God is such a complex being, right? I could talk forever about this. Anyway, God bless you. Stay safe out there, my friends.